So, good morning, Prof. My name is Sonita Afunye from the Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research. I'm the Marketing and Membership Coordinator. Thank you for accepting to have this interview with us, and I'm quite sure our global audience will be glad to hear what you have to say today. So, Prof, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is George Zsidisin. I am a recently retired professor of supply chain management. I have taught at various universities throughout my career, including Michigan State University, Bowling Green State University. I created a master program at Virginia Commonwealth University in supply chain management, and most recently finished my career at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Throughout my career, I've been very fortunate to work in a truly collaborative international environment, so of course, including now the Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research. But other positions I've had throughout my career have included being one of the founding members of the International Supply Chain Risk Management Network, as well as serving as the co-editor for the Journal of Purchasing and Supply Management from 2010 through 2015. And then only a couple of years ago, I served on the executive board for the International Purchasing Supply Education Research Association. Although I am retired, I still enjoy doing a little bit of work here and there as well, of course, including my current role here at the Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research.
Wow, what a profile, Prof. Thank you very
Oh,
much
thank
again.
you.
Um, just a reminder to our global audience that you are a member of the board of uh, AISCR. Thank you very much. So
Yes.
let's dive straight into the pertinent questions that I have for you today. So first off, what role do you see the board of directors of AISCR playing in shaping supply chain innovation over the next decade?
I would argue supply chain innovation is an absolute necessity. Without innovating, organizations die. Supply chains, we have so many advances that continually occur with the technology, understanding processes, and of course, through global supply chain management processes, innovation is something that's always going to be a critical facet for improving supply chains become more effective and efficient in meeting societal needs and requirements. I believe Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research, AISCR, I'm still getting used to the acronym. Uh, so my apologies there.
That's all right.
But yeah, I would self, no, I see it as a critical role because I think we already have established networks throughout, not just in Africa, in the United States, but also in Europe as well, where we could actually really hone in and work with public policy professionals as well as corporations and really better understanding what the needs that they have for continually improving their supply chains. And to me, innovation is that process that facilitates this to be able to allow those firms to be able to succeed. If you cannot provide those products and services efficiently and effectively to your customers, nor if you can successfully source products uh, on a continual continuity basis as well as a cost-effective basis, it is very difficult to compete in today's, in some ways, hyper competitive marketplaces today. So I see our organization really serving that key role to be able to help organizations, both public as well as more private, but public organizations as well, to be able to provide better those needs to their constituents themselves and to be able to improve their supply chains. I believe we have the research capabilities to be able to help and provide those insights to corporations so we can continue to innovate and improve our supply chains moving forward.
Indeed, Prof. I did take it that indeed innovation is the bedrock of every industry, especially in supply chain. It is very important for industries to innovate, for firms to innovate, and I'm glad that AISCR is part of it. The Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research is part of it, doing the groundwork to actually bring in innovation in the aspect of supply chain research and practice, to be precise. Thank you very much for that insight. So, how does the Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research intend to balance academic research with practical industry application? This question comes to you as a member of the board. I believe that you have knowledge about the processes and everything concerning AISCR. So we'd like to get your opinion about that.
Oh, I would argue absolutely. To me, as being a scholar for almost 30 years, I've come to realize that it has to start with industry and understanding what are the challenges that industry faces itself, and then eventually for us as scholars and academics, how can we provide insights to these organizations, things that they might not be clear in being able to see, some of those challenges or opportunities. So to me, it really starts with the research problem that comes from industry itself. And the key part with AISCR is be able to having the repository of scholars and the contacts and the networks of scholars who have the methodological expertise to be able to conduct valid and reliable research. So be able to provide those insights to those to those industry challenges, problems, as well as opportunities. And of course, especially within the supply chain. So I see it as really many ways of positive feedback loop. We see industry issues, problems that exist, then we work as a research community, working in conjunction with those practitioners to be able to provide those insights, those things that might not be intuitive, but also be able to create the robustness of solid research, things that could be replicable in the future, those things that we feel confident in what those findings are. And from the research that we do, to be able to bring it back into industry, bring it back into practice, so it helps form mechanisms for those firms to better run and manage those supply chains. So to me, I see it starts initially with understanding what the industry issues, problems, and opportunities are, and then utilizing the skill sets of the academics and the researchers to be able to conduct those studies that provides insights to those problems as well as opportunities.
Indeed, indeed, Prof. I remember 2 days back we had a round table with the Cameroonian professionals, and they said the same thing, and they were quite excited for what AISCR is bringing, especially with its vast board, with the experts on the board and everything. So I think we are really prepared to go out there and bridge that gap between academic research and practicals. So I would like to ask, what lesson did the COVID-19 pandemic teach us about resilience and adaptability? And how is the Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research putting these lessons into practice, as well as the member organization of the AISCR? Because COVID-19 did come, it surprised a lot of us, and the future we don't know. So it's quite volatile out there. So we'd like to get your opinion about that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. To me, as a call for really the entire world, the entire globe. And I think it really highlighted how truly interconnected we are, not just within the respective country, not just within our communities, how truly interconnected that we are globally and how much dependent we are upon each other globally to be able to provide those needs and require. So from COVID, it was a horrible event, very horrible, prolonged event. Unfortunately, so many lives were lost during the process. But it did provide some, I think, several people. We actually wrote a book focusing on COVID-19 and how it affected supply chains. And I even wrote a couple of journal articles associated with exactly what you were asking about. How do organizations survive through COVID-19? And it really was relationships that were formed ahead of time, or at least I'm a firm believer, is that supply chains do not operate in isolation, but they occur among organizations who usually have a prolonged experience and time working together. And it was those relationships that actually, I think, helped many organizations get through the challenges that they were facing during COVID-19. The relationships they had with their distribution channel partners downstream, the distributors, the wholesalers, the customers, but also, of course, the relationships with suppliers as well, given the constraints that were existing. We found in our research that it was very difficult for organizations to be able to just easily switch from one supply source to another supply source when there were shortages that were occurring, because most organizations were experiencing shortages and challenges. But it was, I think, those organizations that had well-established relationships and network partners that were able to get through the pandemic a little better than those organizations that may not have had such a robust relationships established ahead of time. So to me, COVID-19, it was a very rare, thank goodness it was a rare event. Last time we had something like this was a little over a century ago. But I think we have had learned some of the lessons associated with it, but also we also noticed the challenges when you have a prolonged disruption or disruptions that occur in the supply chain, how they truly can create havoc. And basically people beginning the needs, requirements that they have for society. So overall, I mean, I think there were a lot of challenges, but there were a few learning lessons that came from COVID as well.
Yeah, that's true. So the lesson is every organization should learn how to build a strong network and have partners along the supply chain so that when these things come up, they can easily accommodate it. So my next question will be, how do you see sustainability influencing supply chain designs?
It's a very interesting question. COVID was this is something I always think back starting from 1970 when we had our very first Earth Day. And then we started seeing a little bit more, and I was only a very small child back in the 1970s. So this was many years ago. So I think it's something that's been conscientious within organizations, especially probably in the last 25 years or thereabouts. One of my very first published articles focused on sustainability, and that was a huge subject for academic scholarship in the late 1980s. I'm sorry, late 1990s through the early 2000s, and even today to some extent. But at the same time, I think our progress in this area has still been somewhat limited. And I would say it's due to the incentives that are, or disincentives that can occur from this. So for me, from my understanding, is until organizations are going to be required or more motivated to focus on sustainability, at least I could say from a North American perspective, it's difficult for some firms to fully embrace it if they have significantly higher cost structures that amass from this. So I always think of for-profit companies, they're always thinking, what's the profitability? To me, the question becomes is how do you integrate sustainability and address climate change while also ensuring that your company will be viable in the future and particularly financially viable? It also becomes very difficult for firms who have traditionally worked with types of chemicals, worked with hazardous types of materials, where they have not yet been able to innovate to take out some of those hazardous materials yet. And hence, when the first question you asked about supply chain innovation, why you mentioned it as such a key facet, because without that innovation, it becomes difficult to really engage in sustainability measures that really have a true impact on reducing the harm to Mother Earth, to nature. Uh, so I would have to, in some ways, it's a little challenging for me to say, but in some ways, I think this is where governments do need to become somewhat involved in helping provide some of those pathways for organizations to be able to better focus on sustainability. Climate change, most people have agreed that it is occurring and occurring at a detrimental rate and occurring much more quickly. It's just trying to make that linkage of really convincing and working with companies that they can actually focus on these sustainability initiatives while also ensuring that they can stay financially viable. So to me, that's going to be the key part of it. It's going to be part of the agenda, but right now, I think the agenda is driven a little bit more of what governments are saying themselves. And if many companies, if uh, on their own volition, they may not be quite as motivated to take those extra steps going above and beyond what they can do for climate change. So it's going to be continuing to be a sticky, challenging issue, but one, in the end, we only have one Earth, and we do need to take care of it. It's just, I think this is a problem that has been identified for quite a period of time, but we haven't really been able to fully address it yet. I think at least address it well, because you always have to think the financial part in conjunction
Mm.
with the sustainability part.
Mm. That's true. That's true. So we need governments to come in and try to create policies that will enable sustainability.
But to work with the companies, not to necessarily dictate what the companies should do, but to be
Okay.
able to work in a collaborative fashion. And I
Mm.
would say to be able to work with the industry associations, those where you have many different companies that participate together, and to be able to work with them instead. And at least my viewpoint is, I think it would be much more viable if you're able to work in conjunction with the companies in lieu of just the government saying companies to do X, Y, and Z,
Mm.
but to work in a collaborative fashion.
Oh, yeah, because that would it will make the work much more easy from each end.
And you are tapping into the expertise of the companies as well.
Mhm.
And it was
And
they're the
the
ones
and
who
the
live and breathe
resources
these
from the
processes.
government all together, it makes things much more easier and fluent. So, recently, the companies are thinking more of building resilient systems. So, what role does data analytics play in predicting and mitigating supply chain disruptions?
I love this question. This is something I think back to Walter Shewhart, who was the one who created statistical process control over a century ago, and something that still many organizations utilize today to see where quality failures occur and where they're more likely to occur, and try to discern from, assignable causes of variation compared to common causes of variation. To me, those become failures. Quality is a failure itself. So to me, data analytics has been around for quite some time with statistical process control, economic order quantity models themselves. To me, the huge shift that has occurred is not just the data analytics, but its integration with other activities and processes. And especially, I would argue, under the umbrella of Industry 4.0, where you start having other technologies, where you have the sensors, be able to identify where potential failures can occur in the supply chain much more quickly. So it goes, I would say, beyond just the data analytics, but it's also all these other technologies that are able to sense and to start looking at where these potential issues and failures can occur in the supply chain. So data analytics, I would argue, is one element of Industry 4.0, which I do believe is really changing the way that supply chains are able to operate much more efficiently, much more effectively. And of course, with regard to disruptions themselves, having a greater ability to identify first, sometimes some firms might not even know where a disruption could be for maybe 2 or 3 days after the fact. But utilizing these technologies, the Internet of Things, for example, of how connected that we are, to be able to identify partly through data analytics, but also the other technologies to be able to identify where those potential failures are, or where a failure does occur, to be able to work toward rectifying it very quickly because that information is available much quicker than it was before. Data analytics has been around. I always think about in marketing. It's not supply chain management, but very, very closely related. Data analytics has worked phenomenally well and be able to better understand what customer needs are, what the customer requirements are. And then as long as we're able to continually focus on taking that information and be able to cascade that back upstream into the supply chain. So the data analytics is great, but if you're not sharing that information and if you're not working collaboratively with other entities, other companies that participate in your supply chains, I believe the benefits will be somewhat limited. So to me, data analytics is absolutely critical, but it's just part of a overall larger picture of Industry 4.0 itself and the connections that we have really through electronic mechanisms today.
Wow. Thank you very much, Prof. You quite elaborated it. And the key take is data analytics is very important, but it cannot work on its own. It needs those other systems so they can bring the best out of it all. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So talking about we are in like a global village with the coming of the internet. So how do you approach cybersecurity risk in increasing digital supply chain?
Yes, I will tell you, I think this is one of the research topics I think would be very, very good for us to be able to pursue in conjunction with with various companies and other entities themselves. Was I believe that this is a area that has been getting some focus recently. I think it's a good area that merges information systems and supply chain management processes together. I've done a couple of very small studies in the past, and what I've observed with regard to cybersecurity is that very often it's the weakest link. So very often you'll see those threats will come in from the consumer side, or sometimes from small, medium enterprises with workers that might not be, for example, maybe as well trained with regard to security measures themselves. Cybersecurity is going to be a constant threat as long as we have electronic data mechanisms themselves. It's just, to me, in some ways, it's a cat and mouse game where and the cat's trying to find the mouse and the mouse running away and you got to get the cheese or the information from the systems themselves. But this area, I would argue, is one that is definitely a challenge and only become more of a challenge moving forward as we continually focus on creating these supply chains, sometimes with organizations that might be newer to this. So in many ways, we need to work in conjunction and really do the research, I would say, on this area. So to me, this is still a somewhat understudied area itself, even though there has been greater focus or a need for it. But exactly how that mechanism is, I don't have the perfect answer of how organizations can solve their cyber security challenges. But I know that it is not going away. And I think it is a good area to really better understand what can we learn for trying to create greater robustness and security within our information systems.
Okay. Okay. So, how can supply chain research influence public policy and global trade agreements?
Oh, I think it starts with actually for us starting to understand what those public policy challenges are, to be able to first communicate and know what the governments, the politicians, the companies are going through first. And then from there, by listening, asking good questions, we
Mhm.
can actually engage in those research projects themselves that starts to answer some of those questions or to at least provide some insights to those questions themselves. So with regard to the public policy, global trade, I think we can definitely have a positive impact because we could be those neutral third-party brokers who do the research in an objective way to provide those insights itself. So as long as we have a good research and we have and it's considered acceptable, they will listen to our, and especially as we become better known as an organization, as a research institute,
Institute. Yeah.
will get the legitimacy. So to me, it gets to be having that key one or first one or two large scale research projects that we engage in and that we show those to the supporters of those projects, those are do the funding, and then we get the legitimacy from there. So for me, it's just being able to, if we do good work, good results will occur. And those people who can actually make changes in the supply chain will actually listen and they'll consider our perspectives because they know that we're coming from a neutral, research-based focus.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely right. Bringing the right solutions at the right time to the right persons, it will cause an action, a right action to be taken.
We hope so.
Yeah. So looking at like in 5 years, what's the breakthrough that you hope would happen in the supply chain landscape?
For the Institute, I'll tell you, I think
that
this
we
is
already
one of
would
the
have
by within 5 years, we would have two large-scale research projects that are either complete or nearly complete, where we start presenting those findings to higher level executives in government and industry. In conjunction, the other part I think would be important is to bring in more companies as members for the Institute as well. As for the companies, they will eventually provide, hopefully, the financial resources so we can actually do good research and also not just the research, but also education opportunities as well. You know, various education for supply chain professionals. But I would argue that to have maybe one to two very large scale research projects and then having a basically member companies. Preferably they could financially contribute, but also they were able to better, in conjunction with the board, be able to provide that insights into the research studies that they would like to have done, but also at the same time to be able to help provide us those access to the data sources. Because the research is great, but if you don't have data to analyze, it's you're very, very limited in what
Mm.
you can do. So I would say I already see with AISCR is, you know, I already see those connections being built with various government entities as well as with various companies and nonprofit organizations. In the next 5 years, the more that we can build upon that, have contributing companies that contribute both financially And it's not just for them to give us money, but it's for them as an investment, for them to invest in us, so we could provide those insights to them. At a prior university that I worked at, one of the things I was very fortunate is some of the research projects we would engage in, some of the companies were able to experience a 5 to 10-fold increase of basically from the investment that they made in the research project to how it translated into their profitability. So to me, as being that within 5 years, more companies start seeing the value that we can provide and more companies wanting to invest in us as well. So we could actually continually to grow and focus on innovation, focus on improving supply chains, and truly focus on supply chain management from a global perspective. And to me, that's where I see AISCR being a critical element. It really has enveloped or embedded within its structure an international presence. And to me, this is absolutely critical. Supply chains are critical. So as we continue over the next 5 years, I look very much forward to working on a couple of research projects and working with various companies to be able to truly grow out AISCR.
Indeed, indeed, all the research that is being done is for these companies to use them to advance, to become much more profitable, to become much more resilient, and to grow also as ISCA grows. So
Absolutely.
that was a good one. We are almost running up, and I would like to say that this is just more than insightful. It's more of a master class that we are having right now. Before we end, I would like to hear what you have to say to our global audience.
I have been working in supply chain management since the early 1990s. And so those 35 years, I have seen it advance so much. But we still have, I think, a long way to go as well. Uh, I don't think our journey will end until we get to the point where an individual consumer can instantly think of a need or requirement, and within that next second, that solution is provided to them instantaneously at a very low price. We're very far along away from that. But also, what I always envision with supply chain management, it really has, I think, an overall broader, in many ways, humanitarian goal as well. For the many years that I taught, I always found it a pleasure and actually a privilege to be a supply chain professional because I thought about all of the other business disciplines. And I believe that supply chain management is really the only one that makes a difference in people living and dying on a daily basis. I think about that with regard to food distribution, medicine distribution, for example, healthcare services. To me, supply chain management has a direct impact on all of those things that really help societies run. So for me, supply chain management, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir, as we like to say here, but to me, it's in many ways a meta discipline of business, because it incorporates all other facets of business in some way or another. You know, little accounting, information systems, marketing, down the line, finance. But what we do in the end really has a huge difference in the way that we're able to take care of mankind. And to me, that part I just never want to dismiss. So, with this institute, I see a lot of good positive things moving forward as we go on. But by doing the research and better understanding what those processes are, that is the way that we can eventually improve those supply chain processes to better meet societal needs today and moving forward in the future.
Mm. That's true. Indeed, supply chain does not impact only businesses, but it impacts humanity in general. And so,
Absolutely.
and it's a great thing that the world is beginning to see it, especially from Africa's perspective. Yeah, and we are gradually, I don't want to say gradually, but we're embracing supply chain fully. Thank you very much, Prof. It was
Oh,
an honor having you, and uh, I'm even much more excited. I don't know how our global audience is going to receive this masterclass, but I think they will be glad hearing from you and everything that you've said. And
thank you.
we hope to have you quite often so that you can keep talking to us about supply chain, your role, about AISCR and all of that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a very much an honor to be here, to be able to share my insights with you. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to this interview or the master class. And I'm very excited for us moving forward.
Uh,